who would be taken to the patients, who would be taking the patients. It was during this meeting that Dr. Manamela first mentioned that SADAG board members who worked for government couldn't criticize the GDOH and shouldn't be part of the process as they were employees and couldn't also advocate for patients in this regard. She mentions Dr. Frans Korp, SADAG board member, psychiatrist, and worked for a state facility in Mpumalanga 4 days of the month. Zamu Mbele is also a psychologist at SADAG board member at Tara Hospital, and Dr. Jan Shabalala, SADAG board member and psychiatrist at One Military Hospital, Pretoria. The patients who were admitted at LE were referred by the psychiatrist, and the family members do not have the resources to take care of it. They are too acute and some cases dangerous and too ill to be admitted back into community NGOs. The users needed long-time chronic medication and special care 24 hours a day by a specialized team which includes psychiatrists, physicians, psychiatric nurses, occupational therapists, and psychologists with the NGOs, which the NGOs do not provide. Some of the NGOs were bedridden. Some of the mental health care users were bedridden and wheelchair bound. The patients suffered severe mental illness and had intellectual disabilities that affected their normal daily functioning. Many of the patients had been in LE centers for 3 years to 30 years. Many also not having family members, abandoned or orphaned. During December 2015, the family members received information from the CEO of Life Esidimeni, Mr. Jennen, that the center will be closing down. SADAG also received a call from the social worker at Life Esidimeni with information that the MHCUs will be placed under care of the NGOs. SADAG was very concerned because there was no proper assessment and the identification of the MCHUs done by the GDOH or the NGOs where they would be placed. In December 2015, SADAG, in partnership with Section 27, SASOP and the SA Federation of Mental Health, sent a letter of concern to the GDOH, Mental Health Care Directorate, HOD, and the MEC's office. As a result, SADAG members attended the meeting with Section 27, GDOH officials, including Dr. Silabano, Dr. Manamela, and member of the Executive Committee, MEC of Health in Gauteng, Mrs. Kedani Mshlangu. The contents of the letters SADAG wrote to the MEC was discussed. Dr. Silabano wanted SADAG board members who worked with Dr. Silabano warned SADAG board members who work with the GDOH that they were not allowed to question the decision taken by their superiors, as that leads to conflict of interest. Dr. Silabano said he wanted to meet separately with SASOP to discuss the issue of the conflict of interest. I had a heated discussion with Dr. Manamela, who said SADAG and Section 27 are acting in the best interest of LE. SADAG was warned not to speak to the media concerning the LE project plan. An agreement was reached that the GDOH would not place MHCUs in NGOs without a proper plan was in place. This was then when SADAG first agreed to work in consultation with the GDOH on the project plan. Confirmation was received from the hospital manager at LE that there was an increase in discharge of MHCUs during March 2016, and that was not normal proceedings. The instruction to discharge patients was from Dr. Manamela. 55 adult mental health care users with severe mental illness, some including conduct disorder, were planned to be moved to Takalani Care Center in Diepkloof, Soweto, which was registered to provide residential accommodation and services to children with severe to profound intellectual disabilities. When Dr. Manamela was confronted with the MHCUs being transferred to Takanani Care Centre, she said those patients transferred did not have any records of family members, but the documents from LE shows that the patients had family contacts and even had contact details and attendance register for family visits. SADAG and Section 27 then approached the court to obtain curatorship. After approaching the court and ensuing court case which saw SADAG lose due to a technicality and the GDOH promising the judge that they had prepared the NGOs and the LE patients would be under good care. Needless to say that the first LE patients died at Takalani. After the court case, the relationship with GDOH broke down completely and SADAG did not have any further communication or interaction with the GDOH. Soon afterwards, there was news of patients being moved to NGOs all over Gauteng, but family members had not been notified and told where their loved ones were going. Any information SADAG needed, the centre depended on the family members. SADAG volunteers assisted the families to locate their loved ones and to facilitate meetings with the NGOs. SADAG was prohibited to visit the NGOs, and also the NGOs were not allowed to speak to us by the GDOH through a direct order from Dr. Manamela. The social worker at LE Waverley, whom I do not have a particulars, assisted in sharing a placement list of the MHCUs at NGOs with family committee members, but just for that facility and not the other centres. The Gauteng Department of Health Management was warned beforehand that the way the project planned to transfer the mental health care users at the NGOs is carried out will be disastrous if proper plan is not executed. Moreover, SADAG did not anticipate that the MHCUs will demise or suffer as they did, but a serious concern was raised that the patients would not get proper care and there were serious risks. The initial fear was that the mental health care users would not get proper treatment or their medication, as well as get killed or go hungry at NGOs, or to be far away from the family members, never mind the traumatic impact of the quick and reckless move on the actual patients who were most vulnerable. The centre did highlight and emphasize the role the stakeholders must play in this project and offered assistance throughout the engagements. These were ignored, and it was then sworn. Do you agree that this is your statement, Ms. Chambers?
I agree, yes.
My lady, I would like to hand in this statement as Exhibit B.
Yes. Can I find out if there is any objection to the handing in of the statement?
No objection from us, my lady.
Thank you.
No objection, my lady.
Thank you.
No objection.
Yes, thank you.
No objection, my lady.
Thank you.
No objection on behalf of Ms. Matlangu.
Thank you.
No objection, my lady.
Thank you. The statement will therefore be handed in and marked Exhibit B.
As the court pleases, my lady.
Yes.
I proceed with questions on basis of the statement.
Yes, continue.
Thank you. Ms. Chambers, I want to take you directly to paragraph 10 of your statement on page 4 thereof. You refer there to the discharge of the increase in discharge of MHCUs in March 2016, and thereafter you proceed to refer in this court to the people who died at Takalani or were transferred to Takalani Centre and died there, as well as the court case.
That is correct, yes. That was the second court case in March 2016, yes.
But there was also a court case earlier in the year, is that correct?
That is correct, in December 2015.
The case in March 2016 was found in the favor of the Gauteng Department of Health and based purely on the understanding of the words discharge and transfer. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Judgment, was there any part of that judgment that referred to the well-being of the mental health care users?
Yes, there was. Sorry. Yes, there was. There was a list given of the 55 patients with their diagnosis, their medication and treatment, which explained their functionality and their mental health issues.
Okay.
Mr. Late, you are muted still.
Sorry, I'm not going to ask further questions about the interaction with the government officials. I want to refer you to paragraph 11 of your statement. And that is something that is pertinent in this inquest. You said that you didn't foresee, you didn't anticipate that the MACUs will demise or suffer as they did. Now, if you didn't anticipate it, why do you think the members of the government of the Gauteng Department of Health must have foreseen it?
I think initially when we thought that the patients were being moved, they shouldn't have died from just moving to a different facility. As we were getting more and more reports from the families and the cases and the photos of neglect, abuse and starvation, then we were getting really concerned, and these growing concerns were documented as we saw photos of patients with wounds and being starved. And then our concerns were a lot more heightened. And then we actually saw more of these cases where patients ended up in hospital or getting sick with pneumonia or relapsing. And that's when our dire urgent concerns were even further felt. And that's when we would raise these serious issues where these patients might demise at that stage.
And did you raise these new concerns of the transfer of the patients to Takalani and so forth? Did you raise those concerns also with the Gauteng Department of Health?
Yes, we did. We submitted 2 official letters. We also had the family members report these issues directly to the Gauteng Department of Health in numerous ways, from phoning the helpline to submitting letters. Eventually, when we were not being able to communicate or engage with the department, these issues were also raised in the press and media.
Do you have any personal knowledge of Ms. Mashlangu's, Ms. Kadani Mashlangu's attitude towards the involvement of SADAG and the court case or court cases that were brought by SADAG?
We do have evidence and emails of how the former MEC, Ms. Mashlangu, Kadani had actually called us dishonest before even meeting with us. And we know that from myriad of emails and our interactions with her that she was not happy with us raising these issues. We did, in all of our concerns, raise these letters directly to her. There were over 14 legal letters that were submitted during the period of November 2015 to March 2016, raising our concerns and our issues, numerous occasions, even meetings of minutes We had over 7 direct meetings with the Gauteng Department of Health, and all of these were raised there. And on numerous occasions, she had expressed how unhappy she was with us.
These communications, am I correct that all of them were handed in at the arbitration hearing?
That is correct, yes.
Can you assist the court in any way regarding, I believe not, but I just want you to answer it, regarding the cause of death of certain of the people that you knew about that were transferred?
These were patients that were doing well in a facility and surviving and thriving. And once being moved to NGOs that couldn't take care of them, they starved, they relapsed, they had seizures, they died of dehydration, even abuse. There were many photos that were submitted to us and stories from family members where terrible things were happening, wounds that their loved ones had had. These were not normal proceedings. These patients should never have died under these circumstances, just from being moved from one facility to the next. These facilities were not adequate enough to look after these types of patients.
Do you know of any specific case? Did you visit any specific case or follow up on any specific case in this regard?
We were not allowed to visit any of the NGOs directly since we didn't have family members in the facilities. We had many reports and cases from the family members who had told us what was happening. They would report to us after visiting their loved ones. They would send us pictures. They would sign affidavits and statements of what they had seen and heard. And we had heard this both from family members who had visited patients, as well as some of even the NGO staff that were contacting us because they were concerned as to what was happening.
Is it correct that those photographs and so forth were also handed in as exhibits at the arbitration?
That is correct.
Did you try to visit any of the NGOs where the people were transferred or admitted to?
We did try to also assist and visit those NGOs to try to help in acting in the best interest of the patients and the family members. We were not allowed to interact or speak to any of the NGOs. There was a direct order from Dr. Manamela to the NGOs, and they were told not to interact with SADAG and myself. We had received many calls from the NGOs who were also desperate because they couldn't feed the patients. They didn't have clothes. Many of them didn't even know most of the time which patients they did have. And when we were trying to find and locate family members or patients, we would have to use physical descriptions. They didn't know names or ID numbers because they didn't have any medical records. We had also assisted the NGOs by collecting clothes and foods to donate to them to help them to look after the patients during that time. So those are the types of interactions that we had.
How did you go about to provide these clothes and food and so forth to the NGOs if you're not allowed to contact them?
Many of the family members would also report that when they went to visit their loved ones, they would have no clothes, no shoes. They were in summer clothes in the middle of winter. SADAG then mobilized our volunteers and our team of counsellors to donate clothes. We also had put in our newsletter to encourage people from the community and our members to also donate clothes so that we could at least be giving the family members at their next visit, they would be going with bags of clothes to ensure that the patients had clothes and were warm, which included blankets, pillows, and clothes.
You're muted, Mr. Late.
Yes, we did receive many calls, and I've got a list of the different NGOs. Just off the top of my head, we had calls from Takalani, from Precious Angels, from Cullinan, from Sterkfontein, and Mosenegi Home.
Just go slow. Yes,
Mosenegi Home.
Yes, Mr. Late, you are muted. Mr. Late. Mr. Late. Mr. Late. Irene, can you assist them? Hello. Yes, Mr. Late is muted. We cannot hear anything. It's now him and the witness talking.
Yes, he's muted, but can he hear us when we are telling him to unmute? Because I can see he's active, he's talking, but I'm not sure if he can
Something
hear.
is not right. If you can just give him a call.
I think she might have
Okay.
raised for some of the families, but that wasn't
Just a
unheard
second,
of. We
ma'am.
had
I'm
many
going
of
to
the
stop your
NGOs
evidence.
who were expecting 10
Hello?
patients and
I
then
think
40 would
both
have
of them,
arrived.
they can hear
Some were
us.
expecting
Yes,
5
something is
patients
not
and
right.
20 would have
Let me
arrived.
call him, Judge.
So many of them didn't
Yes.
know how many patients they were getting, what kind of intellectual disability they were receiving. So that was very part of the norm.
Mr. Late, can you hear us? Mr. Late?
Are you?
Yes, you were muted all along.
Okay, yeah, I'm good.
Yes, but now we missed some part of your of the evidence. The last part that I got was when she was talking about them donating clothes, and then she was naming the particular NGOs. I just heard Takalani. From there, I couldn't hear anything.
Sorry, my lady, I'll
Yes,
ask the
and
question again. The other, it was Takalani.
the question was, you asked her as to how did they manage to
That's
give
correct.
them food and the clothes, while she had testified that they were not allowed to go to those places. Yes,
Okay,
just
can you
take it
please
from
ask
there.
that question, Ms. Jammers?
So even though we were not allowed to physically go to the facilities ourselves, we would still collect the clothes, and the family members would, on their next visit, collect the clothes from SADAG's offices and take them to the facility. Many times our driver would also just drop it off at the doors without engaging with the NGOs.
Mm-hmm. And then you named the facility, you were naming the facilities, you just named the which facility, NGOs, you mentioned Takalani?
Yes, the question was, can she remember or indicate which facilities the NGOs contacted them to ask for assistance?
Yes.
There were several NGOs. The ones I can remember off the top of my head was Takalani, Cullinan, Maseko Home, Precious Angels, yes, and also Stokefontein.
I referred to them to Precious Angels, of whom the owner was Ethel Mlube. I referred to my opening statement where I also referred to Ethel Mlube, who said that she was supposed to receive children, but in the end she received adults. I want to know from a witness whether she was aware of this.
I was not aware of any conversation directly with Ethel or Precious Angels regarding the patients she did receive. However, it was very part of the norm that the NGOs did not always know how many patients they were going to receive. They were expecting 10 and 40 would arrive. And that was part and parcel of what was happening during that time, is a lot of the NGOs didn't know who the patients were. They didn't come with medical records or IDs. So often when we were trying to locate family members or patients on behalf of family members, we would have to use physical descriptions, what they were wearing, what they looked like, any physical scars that we could refer to, as the NGOs didn't have a list of the names and the issues that these patients were dealing with.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
What concerns were raised by, say, for instance, Takalani? Why did they contact you?
So we had various reasons that Takalani reached out. It was also clothes, not having enough clothes for the patients. We had many of the staff at Takalani also reach out to us who were concerned about the level of safety for patients, the food they had described and had photo evidence of worms inside the food. They were also concerned around the training of the caregivers, some of them being only security guards and not trained home-based care workers or having any psychiatric training to look after these patients. Also, it's a children's facility, so they're geared to look after children. And here they were getting 55 additional adults to their facility, and they raised various different concerns.
The owner of Takalani and Musego is the same person, Doris Sikukune. Did you receive any concerns regarding Mosego?
We did. We received concerns from family members who had visited loved ones there, talking on how they looked really hungry. They were not wearing warm enough clothes. They were getting sick. Some patients were not getting their medication. They were also concerned. The reports we received from family members was that patients were not getting their medication and they were sharing it because they were not seeing any doctors. So these concerns were also raised, but mainly through the family members.
Have you ever made contact in any way with Doris Sekunkune?
No, we were never able to get hold of the management.
Are you aware that she was formerly a psychiatric nurse at Life Esidimeni?
I had learned about that in the papers in the arbitration.
We also had a consultation with her, and she's also going to testify at these proceedings. According to her, there was not a problem regarding the treatment and care of the patients. The only problem was that they had received too many patients for their facility. Can you comment on that?
At the time that we went to court in March 2016, there was already approval and confirmation that they were receiving 55 patients. So they were very aware of the number of patients and the types of patients that they were receiving, and they have already accepted that.
The other facility you mentioned was the CCRC. What was your concern?
So at Cullinan, we received concerns again from family members who were talking about overcrowding. The level of care had also dropped. Patients didn't have their medication. So a lot of the families were really, really concerned. What we did also help facilitate with that specifically is a meeting with the families and the management at Cullinan to come up with a strategy, especially because they were not getting money from the Gauteng Department of Health and hadn't been paid for months. They were really worried about food, and we were helping to organize food for them just to feed the patients.
See, the reason I ask you these questions is to see whether, or to ascertain whether there was a reckless disregard of the mental health care users by the NGO owners or the employees. Do you know about Anchor Home?
I am aware that it's one of the NGOs that the patients went to. And they
do you know whether they have contacted SADAG at any stage?
We just had reports from family members, but they had never contacted us directly.
Is there any other NGO that had contacted the owners of the NGO that had contacted you for assistance because they couldn't care for these people?
Yes, I'd have to go through the records again. There were some letters.
You're welcome to do that. While the witness is paging file, my lady, I'm going to ask that after this question that we adjourn for the lunchtime.
Okay. Well, are you going to? Why don't you first finish with this witness so that when we come back, they continue.
Okay. This is my last question to this.
That's fine. Okay.
I can also add that we had received concerns from Sia Batanda and also from the staff there, more the caregivers, not the management, that they were concerned about their loved one or with regards to the patients.
Just to make it clear, that is Sia Batanda, not Sia Badinda.
Yes, Sia Batanda.
There are two different places.
Yes, that's what I wanted to verify. See, this is Sia Batanda. And
The other one is Sia Badinda.
okay. But you received concerns about Sia Batanda and only.
And San Michelle home, milady.
And
the San Michelle home, milady.
yes, what were the
Thank you, my
concerns?
lady. The witness is finished with with that question, and that is also my questions to this witness. We can, if it suits my lady, we can adjourn for the tea time, after lunchtime.
Let me see, it's 7 minutes past 1. I think this is the opportune time for us to take the lunch break. Then when we resume, we'll find out if there are those who want to cross-examine the witness. The witness is warned that you are still under oath. You need not discuss your evidence with anybody else until you are excused by the court. So when we resume, you will be cross-examined by the other counsels on behalf of the different role players. The court is going to adjourn now. We are going to resume at, it's 8 minutes past 1. We will resume at 10 past 2.
As a call, please, my lady.
Okay. Thank you very much.